What's up, homies? What's up, homies? What's up, homies? Welcome to the Knowledgeable Homeowner Podcast. We pick the brains of industry pros to unlock the trade secrets of homeownership. Our mission is simple: to turn everyday people into knowledgeable homeowners. What's up, homies? Welcome back to the Knowledgeable Homeowner Podcast. I'm Sturdy Joe, and sitting here today with me is Buddy Bela, the owner of Rain Rite Irrigation. What's going on, buddy? Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. How's it going?
Welcome to the barn.
I appreciate it.
Now,
we got it all decked out.
Dude, we got
doing
the
good.
hat, we got the Long Island. So, you're familiar with this place. You've done some sprinkler work here. I have big plans for what I want to do in the backyard, and it might be very soon. I'm so happy. And
if I had $1 for every time I heard that,
let me tell you. If things go good, man, if we have a good season, man, like I got some stuff I want to do.
Awesome.
But I'm a home inspector. I go in a ton of houses. I see a lot of hack work, and I think, irrigation is definitely one of those ones where we see weird stuff. So I know that there's so much value that somebody like you can bring, because you're I'm sure there's good irrigation guys out there, but I don't know many of them personally, but I've seen your work, and not just knowing you personally, but seeing your work that you do. You're a high-quality irrigation installer. You're a true tradesman. This is your craft. So I'm really glad to have you on, because there's so much value you can bring to the people. Before we get into that, I want you to take a second, introduce yourself, tell us how Rain Rite came to be, give us the whole backstory.
All right, perfect. So, like Joe said and introduced me as, my name's Buddy Bela. I live right here in Islip. I was born and raised in Bayshore, all the way out west. So, but I'm a local guy, local business owner, firefighter in the area. So, working close to home hits home for me. But Rain Rite, so I actually had no intention of being a sprinkler guy my whole life. Irrigation always wound up being one of those jobs that was just always there. When I was a kid, I had pickup jobs everywhere. You wash dishes, you do whatever, but sprinkler work was always there for me. I used to cut grass 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever it was. Built a little trailer for my bike, and I would pull a little snapper mower around the neighborhood where I lived in Brightwaters, and cut lawns for like $5. It was a hustler back then. Yeah, so
like the Brightwaters
that was it.
Neighborhood, they couldn't afford to.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway. Yeah, so here I am, undercutting little kid. But
there you go.
So one day a truck pulls up to me. I didn't know, but there's a guy in it, like everything your parents tell you to run away from. Big van, dude in the van, dirty, rolls down the window and he's yelling at me, "Hey kid, you're cutting all my sprinkler heads with your lawnmower. I'm going to tell your dad you're going to come work with me." Turns out it was another local business. His father was really good friends with my dad, and
nice.
At a really young age, I got into sprinklers. Like, he used to pay me $2 a head after school to change sprinkler heads. That's hilarious. That business is still in existence. The owners since passed, but that's how I got my start. And it just, like I said, it was always there. I left home right after 9/11, joined the military. Was gone for a while with that, and wound up actually seeking employment in irrigation in the military. Kept telling myself, yeah, this is good. I'm going to, get my GI Bill. I'm going to get money for college doing this. And then, I'm going to be a doctor, a lawyer, whatever, and hit it big. And, it just, everywhere I went, no matter where I lived, it was here, down south, military, I was always working in sprinklers. And came home, started working for a couple companies. Like you said, you see how people work, right? Mm-hmm. So I worked all over the East Coast, and I picked up a lot of habits, and I learned a lot of what not to do. So, I have control issues, I think. I think a lot of business owners can admit to that. That's why we get into this position. Being able to regulate it and navigate through it is key, but I just want things done a certain way. I want to go to sleep at night, and when I work for somebody and they talk to me and they tell me no, you have to do it this way. It's time is money, this and that. When the client's interests and the end result isn't what's primary, it's not the focus, I'm not about it. So I just made a decision one day after working for somebody that, it's time for me to start my own gig. And Rain Rite was born about 15 years ago. And very, very, very soft start. Very hard, very difficult.
That's business, man. Everybody sees the overnight success, or everybody sees what now you're rocking and rolling, and I see your sticker all over the place. I go in a lot of houses, and I'm very Islip centric. I do a ton of Brightwaters. See your sticker all over the place, but I resonate with the soft start thing too, because my first year home inspections I barely did any, and now I feed my family with it. So I totally get that. And it gives you a little bit of business chops too, because now it's like, all right, I got to go out and sell.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, I had no idea, like anybody, I didn't know what owning a business was, starting a business. I knew how to be a good sprinkler guy. I knew how to deliver a product and make sure the client was happy and make sure that my job was done and it was done beyond the expectation. When it came to running the business, I mean, I took a couple business classes here and there, and I come from a family of business owners, but nothing preps you for that.
No.
And it really takes a specific breed of person, I feel like, to balance it all and manage it all. Again, going back to that control issue, but
I think with tradespeople too is because being a good sprinkler guy and being a good business owner are two very, very different things. It's conflicting parts of the brain. It's different skill sets, so it's definitely a difficult thing to do. And then, unfortunately, to run a good business, you got to be good at both.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's nice too with like being in the trades is like you can create a team. You can have guys that you train. Hopefully they can learn it and they can stick around, which is a whole other problem we deal with. It's big in construction on Long Island.
Yep.
But at any point throughout your day, and I'm sure you're forced to, but even if you weren't forced to, if you wanted to, you can roll your sleeves up, get your hands dirty, start working with the guys, jump in when you need to. And
I have to do that. I have to do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's my sanity. Like, I didn't start this. I mean, don't get me wrong. Owning a business does not mean you're in the trenches all day long.
Yeah.
But for my sanity, I have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So in the summer, we could see you with nice dirty hands, dirty fingers,
Always.
and
Always.
Yeah.
Always. I was
Getting
in the ditches
wet.
today in
Yeah?
the rain. I was out there today.
Oh,
so,
yeah, it was a nasty day out there.
Yep. That's life, man. I don't know. I'm not scared to work. That's for sure. And I think
So
that's what got me
15 years irrigation.
Yep.
A good
25 years probably irrigation.
Yeah, 15 years of doing it for yourself. Tons of clients, tons of stories, I'm sure, tons of situations. So
Oh yeah.
off the bat, blanket question, like what is the most common dumb thing you see people, either homeowners doing to their own sprinklers or bad installers doing? What is like a huge pet peeve you have with bad work?
I mean, God, there isn't just one. I have an unregulated industry, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to that, it means that nobody's out there following up on what we're doing, right? There are codes, there are municipalities that want us to follow certain things, but nobody's checking, right? So it just off on the fly, no backflows, no conduit on wires, having different types of heads together on the wrong zones, not focused on watering things, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later, so that makes sense and stuff like that.
Just because I think this is a good one that people don't realize, and I want you to explain it like I'm 5 years old. What is a backflow?
All right, so most of us don't know this. There is actually an international plumber's code, and more so there's also one for the state, which breaks down and a lot of the municipalities follow. Since we're in Islip, I'll go over that. I have a license in Islip. It's number 135. You can look me up. I'm a limited plumber, so I've had that license since I've been in business, all in good standing. We have to follow a code. So basically, sprinklers fall under this code because when our domestic water, we tap into that and we exit the house with it. There's all these things in our lawn that water can come in contact with that can be potentially harmful and or fatal to us. Animal feces, fertilizers, contaminants in soil, anything, you name it out there. There's a plethora of stuff that could all wind up coming in contact with us in any way of contact or indigestion and being harmful. So what a backflow does is when your water exits the house, goes out into this sprinkler system and starts mixing with things and then potentially, drawing back. When a fire department opens a fire hydrant, you fill your bathtub, turn on a sink or something like that. That contaminated water can start getting sucked back in through your system into your house. The backflow is a device that usually has 2 check valves that stops that water from entering or re-entering the house. So essentially, it's a Department of Health regulated safety device that we need to put on systems. In our county, Suffolk County, they do not regulate it. So a lot of contractors get away with telling people, hey, you guys don't need that. It's just a money grab. Don't worry. Total BS. Yeah. You actually do need it because Suffolk County is a very large entity. They cannot be responsible for every single municipality. Islip, Babylon, Huntington, Village of Lindenhurst, Southampton, East Hampton.
Yeah, there's so much going on.
Exactly. So for us, we have to be licensed in each of those municipalities, follow each code there.
They're trusting you to install it the right way, but nobody's double checking you. So if you don't have solid ethics and morals, you're not going to do the right thing. And that one to me is kind of crazy that somebody would say it's like a money grab because it makes I think people don't understand science in a sense. Like you said, when we put on a fixture in another part of the house and all the pressure is running that way, it can create a suction.
Exactly.
And we can get contaminants from our ground, which we're literally dumping fertilizer on top of it or anything, pesticides, we're getting the tick spray, whatever it is, that can get sucked back in. So you mentioned that they typically have the backflow device that has the 2 check valves, and it's just like a large brass, big piece of metal that is typically between your water main and a shutoff valve for the irrigation, right?
So based on our codes, like we could use islip for an example here since we're here. You want to be the first contact, right? So your water main comes, for your house example, you come up in your little crawl space there, your water main comes up. We have to be the first tie-in, right? Now, when did I install this? Probably 6-7 years ago, right? So I'm working off of memory here. We go in his tiny little crawl space this high. And his water main comes up on the north side of his house. So right about the center point, we have to be the first point of contact, meaning that I can't come in after sinks or whatever, you know? So we're the first thing that's teed in. We exit the building. For us, like you were explaining what's commonly referred to as a double check valve, 2 check valves or an RPZ device, you know, a reduced pressure zone valve. Both are interior devices. One will leak when it's bad. One requires a test. All devices require a test, but a backflow double check is mandatory. For islip, they do away with all that. They want us to have a pressure vacuum breaker. So it's actually a single gravity-fed backflow device that goes on the exterior of the home where when it goes bad, it leaks. Therefore, you know, negating the fact that it needs a test, you should get them tested, but if it's going to have a problem, it's
so it kind of makes it like neglect-proof. If you're neglecting it, it's going to fail and it's going to leak, and now I'm going to be forced to change it.
Now you're going to call somebody.
So the vacuum breaker is that kind of upside-down cone device that you see on the outside. It looks like the top of a urinal for the guys.
Exactly.
Because the top of a urinal is a vacuum breaker also for the exact same reasons.
Yep.
So that device, islip asks for that instead of the double check?
Yep, because they know that everybody's not testing their double check
Yeah, it
valves.
makes perfect sense.
You know, and that's the way that the plumbing codes all throughout are actually going. Nassau County, you go in a lot of towns and municipalities out there, they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're kind of getting away from that double check world because they know that nobody's paying the $75 to $150 or whatever everybody's charging a year to test them. You know, so that's what it is.
Okay, so the backflow preventer is an extremely important device and is very commonly overlooked. And if we're not hiring a professional, if we're doing it ourselves, that is something that we might not see. So for a homeowner, if you know where your irrigation shutoff is or you know where your water main is if you don't see that device between those 2 points, like you said, the first tee off of your water main, or if you go outside by the manifold box and you don't see that vacuum breaker, which is that upside down cone device, then something's wrong. And now let's call that irrigation guy and have him come in.
Yeah.
And that's why you need to be a
licensed
plumber, because you're touching the potable water of the home.
Exactly.
Okay, so we started on a list of other hacky things that you see overlooked, and can we run that back? We talked about the vacuum breaker. You were talking about zones.
So that's a big thing. Zoning a system is everything. You know, we get calls all the time, and it's like sometimes you just want to shake people because it's like, where'd you learn your manners? You know, it's like I'll answer the phone if I'm answering the phone or anybody in the office answers the phone. You know, we always start with a good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for calling Rain Rite. This is such and such. How can I help you? Instead of saying like, good morning, how are you? It's, what do you charge for this? Or blah, 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 blah. You know, and that's what jumps into it. And I get that. You know, we live on an expensive island with everything flying through the roof as it goes. And people don't actually take the time to sit down and realize there's a big difference across the board in what I do, what you do, what everybody does, right? And you have to really become educated on that. So zoning systems, right? It's not, my job is not so simple as coming to your house, connecting a pipe to your spigot on the outside of your house and just throwing sprinkler heads wherever I please and paying a bunch of guys that I picked up on the side of the road to put them in the ground. You know, like we just spoke about. We have to know a lot about the water, about the codes. We have to be licensed plumbers, insured all throughout, so on and so forth. And then therefore, we also have to know a lot about plant material, about turf, about sun and shade exposures, about soil conditions and consistencies, you know, differences between flower beds and all of this kind of stuff. What types of plantings, annuals, perennials, the list goes on and on and on. And the thing of that is when you zone things improperly, right, you tie your sunny grass in with your shady grass, you're going to kill grass because you're going to turn areas to moss because you're overwatering or underwatering to keep up with stuff. Same thing with flower beds. You don't want your grass watering your flower beds and all this. I mean, I could talk about that for hours if I needed to, and I won't. But hopefully, you know, a brief description of that makes sense because I can turn on a zone in a heartbeat and just automatically tell, like, this is why the grass is dead over here. This is why these trees are struggling, or so on and so forth. And,
well, because everything that the water's touching is different, has different needs. Every plant has different needs, and if you're just installing, heads that all do the same thing, just dump a ton of water,
Yep.
they're wasting money. The homeowner's wasting money in two ways, because they're paying good money for that water,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're just killing whatever plants that they're trying to keep alive.
Exactly.
And so when you're designing a system,
Mm-hmm.
you're taking into consideration the plants that are going in, and you're not just going to put in something you could charge the most for.
Exactly.
Essentially. Because the way I look at an industry like the irrigation industry is it's a good money grab for people, because it's not very regulated, and I think the average homeowner off the bat doesn't realize the difference in the quality of work.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
So is it a profitable, like doing it the right way sometimes can make you a little less profitable because it takes more time to design it? And
if I'm being completely honest, yes, absolutely. Because the biggest factor for me is that I have to compete with those guys that are charging by the zone. The volume guys that are just, I don't care about anything. I'm giving you the lowest price to get the work. I'm installing and going, and I'm never coming back. And that's my competition. So I get it when I show up, and if I may be, a quarter or double the price, or, we may have a service guy show up that doesn't deliver, a spot on, service right away. Like there may be certain things that turn people off about us because of price, and it's tough. But yeah, we sacrifice a lot of profit just to kind of deliver the right thing every time, and you don't want to have to say or really admit to that as a business owner, but I'll be honest, because I do that and I pour my heart and soul into it, if I sacrifice that little bit, I gain so much more from it.
Yeah.
And that's I think the thing and the reason why we have the reputation we have, and we've been around for so long.
Yeah. The reoccurring theme for people who are following along is the people I talk to and interact with, is that's paramount for our businesses, is that I want to be 20 years down the road still getting referrals from people I did when I first started, because we did the right thing. I don't care about the quick money. I want to do it the right way. And that's something that working with you from the bat, that you exposed these conversations we're having right now, we had years ago, and you exposed that to me, where it's like, wow, there is varying degrees of quality in the irrigation world. And then doing home inspections, I start to see different things about how it's impacted. So I want to go back, just because we're talking about exposing low quality installs and the differences. Now, there's multiple components in the irrigation system. There's materials that go into it. Is there a difference in the quality of materials that people are using, or is it pretty standardized? Is the cheap guy installing the same quality equipment? Is that a concern in your industry?
There is. It's not. I'm not going to say it's the number one concern, but there definitely is. There's certain brands out there that guys are buying for half the price, like timers, for example.
Okay.
There are brands out there that people are paying half of what I'm paying for, and we see them last a quarter of the time.
So a timer is one of the devices that can be cheaped out on.
Yep.
But the black pipe in the ground,
generally,
the manifolds, those kinds of things, it's all the same kind of. They're all like the PVC material.
Yeah, you're pretty much pennies on the dollar with that stuff. The valves, listen, we're a Hunter company. No plug for them, but I've used it all. In the 25 years I've been doing this stuff. I see the least amount of problems with what I provide.
And Hunter is a brand that we can go to Home Depot and I can buy a replacement head for Hunter.
You can. Yeah. The stuff that we use, they're not going to sell
higher
that.
grade.
It's basically, contract grade stuff. They do have a core line of things like everybody does. And, they make millions of dollars, billions of dollars off this stuff. They're a massive company and they do it right. But for us, that's the thing to me, like you said, I don't care about, for me, keeping my expenses low by cheaping out on the material I buy to provide, because, again, I want to sleep at night, and I want to come back here in 5 years and turn it on and be like, oh, look, this is still working, awesome, great.
And like you said, you're not buying gold-plated material where it's really cutting into margins too much anyway. And it's probably, in the long run, as a good business owner, you're getting less callbacks on stuff that breaks down or fails on you because you're putting in quality equipment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about quality installs. We're talking about different materials. Now, I'm a home inspector. I don't inspect irrigation systems. When I do a home inspection, I'm doing a visual inspection. Anything I put my eyes on, I'll give an opinion on.
Yep.
There's a decent amount of the equipment underground, and unless the sprinkler system's running, we can't see it. Yep. So as an irrigation guy, obviously you can't make judgment on a system that you don't put your eyes on yourself, you don't run, right? But let's just say I'm calling you up, I'm like, buddy, I'm going to buy a house. You can't make it, you're on vacation. But what are some things that I should look for to see, am I going to have problems with this system? or am I not? Is there anything we could see, like opening up the manifold, looking at the timer, maybe seeing a few heads, maybe even if the homeowner lets us run a zone or two? Is there anything that a regular person can keep an eye out for when they're going to buy a house?
So yes and no. I'm actually glad you brought this up because I was going to flip it and try and ask you some questions, and this was going to be one thing because this is a huge thing in my world. Right now, as we know, we've had for the past 4 or 5 years, people buying houses like you can't believe.
Buyer's remorse is coming in hard.
Big time, and the biggest thing that I see, not just because I do it, if you're selling your house, right now, it's still a little bit of a seller's market out there. So you're selling your house. The last thing you're doing is calling your sprinkler guy going, hey, come over and just give me a couple $1,000 renovation on my sprinkler system. I need this thing perfect. You're in there changing what needs to be changed, closing up COs and permits and stuff like that. And you're not caring about sprinklers because all they really require is a letter from a sprinkler company that says everything works. Which in theory, if you push a couple buttons on the timer and they turn on, it works. Yeah. So it's very difficult to just look at a system and say, oh, we're good. Now, I know from my experience, if I'm there and I look at something, I can tell by the color codes of the wires that come off of certain valve solenoids, like how old they are.
Oh, wow.
I know where to look at a timer to see the date code to see how old it is. I can look at the sprinkler heads, which also have date codes on them, to see how old they are. But we really do need to turn the system on. We need to see the layout. We need to see where the heads are located, what our exposures are, how the heads function. There's seals in these heads that stop them and that keep them efficient by, stopping them from leaking.
Yeah.
If the system hasn't been properly maintained, if it hasn't been properly winterized, these seals are going to leak, causing waste in water and stuff like that. Now, again, grand scope of things in a house, I understand as an irrigator that it's a very, very, very limited concern for people that really have and pour too much energy into this, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, when you get into your house, and everything's settled, you got your couch, your rug, your
I'll
paint,
tell you what,
you're
though,
good. You want green grass.
And people are spending $1 million on a house.
Oh, yeah.
And like you said, we're in bright waters. There's expensive houses. This isn't first-time home buyers who are going to put a little fan sprinkler out.
No.
We'll nitpick a $1,200 water heater replacement, but will not care about an irrigation system that needs thousands of dollars in repairs.
And now a word from our sponsor, the Ryan Anthony Head Start Fund. This foundation is focused on providing alternative career paths for young people other than just college. If you want to learn more about what they got going on and some updates, you can check them out at lookwhomadeit.org. Now back to the show.
And it's an interesting thing. Now, I don't like to lie to my clients, and I don't like to pretend to offer value. And that's why one of the best ways I build trust with my clients is by saying no to certain things. When they call me for a cesspool inspection, I 100% can run the sewer scope in there and do it myself. I don't. I call a cesspool guy in, and I've had him on the show. His episode should air, before this one airs. But I call a cesspool guy in, and the same thing with the irrigation. I do. I look at the valve box. I look at the timer on the wall. I'll look at some of the heads. I'll tell them this thing's disgusting, or a homeowner did it. But that's the extent of it. I'm not going to tell them I inspected it, even if I ran zones and told them it was fine, because there's so much more that goes into it than just running the system. Yeah, and that's so my recommendation is contact an irrigation specialist. Have an irrigation. Some of these zones, you have 20 zones. They got thousands of dollars in plants that rely on these systems to run. They're spending $500 a quarter on water to keep these expensive plants alive. This is an expensive system that and like I said, these aren't first-time home buyers who don't, like, my grass is all crabgrass, whatever. No, there's luscious grass that they paid money for inside. There's crazy planters. The irrigation system is an important part of that house. It's not going to keep the house from falling down, but for their standard of living, it totally is.
100% is the one thing that maintains 90% of your curb appeal. Yeah. So, it's got to be working in tip-top shape. It's just, like I said, it's unfortunate that there's really no way to just look at it. You could sit there and go, look, I don't have a backflow. My timer wiring looks like crap or whatever the case may be. But I've seen systems that, to the eye, I would, hands down, would think be the worst in the world. And, there could have been an antiquated old timer that put this thing in years ago by hand every square inch. And, that was the guy that we all learned from. And it still, to this day, works
it's working mint. Yeah.
There's things like, it's one of those things, if it ain't broke, don't fix it type of industry. But at the same time, everybody's got their little touch and their way of doing things. And, that for me, I always tell everyone, when you get in, people tell me all the time, oh, I'm selling this house, I'm moving here, I'm going over here. All right, well, get me out there, we'll come out, we'll check it out, we'll check everything out. Oh, I know you're going to find everything. That's what people say, oh, you always find all the problems. So that's my job.
Yeah, you know what to look for.
That's my job.
Yeah, Dude, listen, coming from the inspection side, it's my job to identify defects, identify things that are wrong, and I'll tell you, I can do a home inspection in 30 minutes. I'm not going to find shit.
Yeah.
If you run through it and you don't take time to look for something, it's not going to pop out to you. You take the time, you dig through it, you know where to look, which makes your inspection much more efficient because you know where the problem areas are. But you got to take the time to look at it, you got to know what you're looking at. So you touched on looking at different components and seeing the age of the wires, seeing the age of the heads. What issues do you run into with an aging irrigation system?
So, sprinklers weren't really that big in the 70s. I mean, there was irrigation in the 50s and 60s and 70s, but it wasn't something that we were regularly seeing in neighborhoods. I mean, our neighborhoods on Long Island weren't even that big yet. We were still a developing community.
Yeah.
So what we tend to find is a lot of those systems, late 70s into 80s, and even some in the early 90s now, they have a lifespan. We've tend to believe that there's that 3-decade to 3.5-decade lifespan on the way that the poly pipe, that black sprinkler pipe that we use, was manufactured back then, whether it was the chemical components in the plastics or whatnot. I've seen it firsthand. I mean, it just happened on a job we winterized a couple weeks ago. A contractor just purchased a new building, very old, and the pipe becomes brittle like glass. Like you can basically squeeze it and it'll just fracture and shatter. And that's just from years of expansion and contraction and heat and cold and all these different things. And that's it, So we've tended to see that 30-year mark. There's other things with age like animals and stuff like that and lack of concern and care to certain things. But wear and tear is completely different from, I think, the longevity of the lifespan. I mean, timers you might get, 15 years on average out of. Rain sensors you're going to see 2 to 5 years on.
Okay.
So everything has its kind of timeline and deadline on. And these are just general things that I recommend the replacements on. Like everybody says, rain sensors, they don't work. Yeah, you're right, because your sprinkler contractor bought a $7 one with a speaker wire on it and put it in the shade on the side of your house, and it never picked up anything except for algae.
Yeah.
So things like that are see, here I go now.
I love that. I felt that. I was like, do more of that. Do more of that. Talk your shit, dude.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. But that's the thing. Like these are the issues with my industry. Not so much. Unfortunately, a lot of guys install things the wrong way, so they don't get to make it to that 30-year lifespan. You might see, 10 years, 15 years, just based on the fact that stuff was done wrong. So that's it. But my recommendation is, if you're really looking and getting into that house the first time, passes inspection, everything's good, call a good, reputable contractor in the spring or whatever time of year it is that you can safely turn on your water, and just spend the time and go through it. Make sure that they're educating you on every aspect of that system. Don't just get somebody that comes and charges you $60 and they're gone in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So they're doing nothing.
Yeah, they're not doing anything. You might as well just be doing it yourself. Okay, so going back to the inspection part of it, one of the things that I do look for are signs that the system, when it's running, is causing other problems. So a big thing I see, which I'm hoping, I'm sure I know the answer, but how many times I see sprinklers that spray the side of the house? That's somebody who just does either. Could the conditions change? Maybe it didn't do that when it was installed, or is that just an irrigation guy who just didn't check to make sure we're not spraying the side of the house? That's not good. Because my end, as for the building, that's bad.
Absolutely.
We're soaking that siding. We're wetting the sheathing. We can't do that.
It's installation issues. Number one, obviously you want to select these areas where you're installing these heads to where they're watering away from the structure. There's other things like we talked about before, shade exposures too. Like you don't want to have water on certain parts of the house, like the northern or western facing sides of the house. Anybody can go outside to their house right now this time of year, go to the north side of your house. You more than likely have some form of algae on it because it holds moisture.
Yeah.
Look through your grass on that northern side. You're going to see moss in there. So what do you think happens to a house when you hit it with water on that side? The foundation obviously breaks down over time. You see the plates rot out.
Yeah.
I have a lot of construction knowledge as it is anyway, so I know what to look for when I'm going through all this stuff. But I see that and I point this out to people. A lot of times contractors, unfortunately, are hiring guys that have no idea what they're doing and just put a flag in the ground and put the head here.
That's it.
And there's no rhyme or reason as to why. It's just it makes sense to go there because I think it goes there. We try to tell everybody and again, falls right back to that. Make sure you have a qualified person come and look at this stuff. You know, like you hit it on the head. Like, these are things you tell that homeowner, like, hey, you don't want this here. You don't want, these are the problems it's going to cause over time. It's not going to be today. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it's going to be 10 years from now. And then you're not going to want to pay for all this kind of repairs.
So it brings up an interesting point to me is, like, let's just say we're building a brand new house. We're going to, you know, hire all licensed contractors, and we're going to do some sick irrigation in the front for our sick landscaping. And you mentioned codes as it goes to plumbing, but as far as like layout and the design of it, it really truly just depends on your discretion. You have to choose to do a good install, which makes me laugh because if you look at new construction plans now, architects are putting the exact location of every joist. They're putting the exact location of every hanger. Everything is detailed, and they're making it so idiot-proof where the framers don't even have to think anymore. But like, it sounds like, all right, it's just the sprinklers, but people do masonry stone veneers that don't drain properly to begin with, and now they're spraying the side of that stone veneer with their sprinkler head. And it's just funny to me how it's 100% just, it's one of the only trades that's left up to you to just make the right decision.
That's like I said originally, there's zero regulation, and it drives me mad. I have to pay thousands of dollars for all my licensing, all my insurance, keeping up with all this stuff, the training courses, all this stuff. And I do it because that's the right thing to do.
But it's not doing anything. There's nothing happening with that money.
There's nothing. Like, I almost wish that they would regulate it. Like, would it make things more difficult? Yes. But what we don't realize as contractors is there are parts in this country that it's regulated. You know, you have to submit a plan.
That's what blows my mind. Is because like in the home inspection industry, we're licensed in New York, and I still think it should be way, 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 way stricter. And I think there should be an apprenticeship program, and it should be totally revamped. Whatever, at least it's licensed. There's states with no license. There's states with bullshit certifications where it's still crazy. It's like, all right, I get it, maybe 30 years ago the world was different. But like, there's states operating without the need for licenses. It's just truly based on the guy, you know, the only thing holding him there is like his insurance and making sure he doesn't get sued. But so you're saying that there's states where there is more strict licensing and
there's actually like irrigation licenses specific to that. Ours here, They have like 3 questions on the Suffolk test about sprinklers, but a majority of it's really about backflows and the code and plumbing and stuff like that. That's really, and all the tests I've taken in all these municipalities, I've taken them all. I hold all the licenses. I mean, they're all relatively the same. It's more so about the code, the backflow, and what you do in your plumbing, and a couple things here and there about sprinklers.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the licensing is just making sure that they can say the state or the county or the town told you the right thing to do that won't get anybody sued. Like, it's like you said, the backflow preventer is because it's a health hazard. The Department of Health wants you to do it. So it's like, we told you to do it this way, and that's it. Now it's hands off.
And that's why Suffolk County kind of passes the buck to all the municipalities, because think about it. I mean, there's how many different districts in this county? I mean, alone. You know, so it's just easier for them to say, nope, give it to these guys.
Oh, that's very interesting. All right, so to take it to installs, and we spoke about the water main. Obviously, the irrigation, when it's running, is going to use a significant amount of water. If I have a house with whatever water main was here when the house was built, because most people have an original water main, and I want to install an irrigation system, am I going to need, is there certain water main line diameters that we would need to upgrade? Is that something that maybe I wouldn't expect, or is that not that common? Can we work with an older water main? Absolutely.
You can absolutely work with an older main. Really, it just depends on the property, right? Obviously, size of the property, how we're laying out the system, what the needs and requirements are, how many zones we're going to lay out, things like that. You know, the biggest thing for us with water mains, I've done it. I mean, I've used small diameter water mains, you know, 5/8, 3/4, and watered an acre of property. You know, it's possible. May not be as efficient, and you also may be dealing with a client who doesn't want to call the water authority and have them increase the size of the water main. You know, it's an expense. You know, these are things that they require, you know, a reason behind and obviously a fee behind. But biggest thing, like what we have to look for, is what that water main's delivering. You know, these are things that are huge, and a lot of people don't realize.
Delivering, you mean by the pressure?
Volume.
The volume,
yeah, not pressure.
So we don't just look at the diameter, we got to see how it's performing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I go behind jobs all the time. I just have my sprinklers installed, they don't work, the guy's not picking up his phone, and we go there and we turn them on, and the heads are just bubbling at the grass. In Suffolk County, not so much Nassau, but Suffolk County, we get our water from the aquifer out east, right? It's an underground well. We have hard water here. It means it has iron, sulfur, phosphorus, magnesium, all these different minerals. We use copper mains for the most part, a lot of times. There are plastic ones out there that are being used now, but for the most part, we're seeing galvanized still from back in the day and copper. all these minerals break down and they stick to the inside of that piping. So just like if you eat McDonald's 3 times a day, every day for a month, you're going to get clogged arteries, right? So same thing with clogged, dirty water, it's going to clog those pipes, going to affect the performance. So where you might expect to see anywhere between 10 and 16 gallons a minute on a 3/4 inch line, you might very well produce 8 to 4 gallons and now not be able to do stuff. And most people say, my pressure's fine. My pressure, the guy came, I have 60 pounds. Yeah, you can have pressure, but you're not going to have volume. And I ask people, when you take a shower, if somebody flushes the toilet or whatever, or turns the sink on, does one thing underperform? Or, oh yeah, it almost shuts all the way off. Well, that's because you don't have volume.
So pressure is PSI, which you could test. You could put a PSI gauge on your spigot and it'll turn on. So that's the PSI, which is important still, right?
Absolutely.
But GPM is the volume.
Yep.
What impacts does a low GPM have versus what impacts does a low pressure have?
So low pressure, I mean, really, again, I don't want to say pressure has nothing to do with anything, right? So it does, the static and dynamic pressures regulate how our heads perform, okay? There's strength behind it. The speed behind it is if it's going to perform, right? So the thing about volume for us is I'm basing all these sprinkler heads that I use, right? So we have a square right here. I'm putting 4 heads on this square. And I know it's a full sun exposure, good drainage conditions. I want to use between 2 and 3 gallons a minute per head on my rotor head, right? So if I'm putting 4 heads at 3 gallons a minute, you do the math, it's 12 gallons a minute. You're giving me a water line that produces 6 gallons a minute. Well, now I'm in trouble. That one zone now becomes 2 zones, right? So if I don't know how to test for that, and I don't know how to do the math, and then also if I find the problem in the water main and I don't know how to solve it, there's an issue there, right? So like, what do most guys do that don't know anything? They now knock on the door and say, hey, homeowner, now you're going to charge you $2,000 to put a booster pump that you really don't need on your sprinkler system because I don't know what I'm doing and I want to waste your money. So like there's certain things like that. So again, volume, speed, and delivery, pressure, it's strength, but not as important.
Yeah, I understand. So what are some of the issues, like you said, that we can run into with the main line that are correctable, that we wouldn't need the booster pump for?
So obviously a clogged main, right? So a lot of times
from the scale build up, like you said.
I mean, really, I shouldn't even say this because it's like giving away the trade secrets, so I'm not going to say it. There are ways that experienced contractors know how to guide you through what to do to have your water mains unclogged, all right? We're not going to sit here and say we need to replace your water main, right? There are actually free solutions that can be done by outside agencies that we can bring in for help. Sometimes it may require a little bit of time, a little bit of waiting, and a little bit of
because you're waiting
politics.
For,
but there's certain things we can do in that regard. Now, if it comes to a point where like it's totally up to us, technically and legally, we're not allowed to touch the water main, right? Yeah. So for all legal purposes, I can't really do anything. Now, if we have an issue with a water meter in a lawn and, coming up forward, now I have a little bit of play because now my licensing and so on and so forth allows me to do something.
Because I own more linear feet of that water main.
So just so simple as like getting a stent when you have that clogged artery or, have some plaque broken up or whatever the case may be, we're basically performing the same types of services on a water main to help it flow a little better. And I do it, I see it, I assist in having it done all the time, hundreds of times a year. And then it's not so much just for the sprinklers. I have people calling me afterwards like, oh my God, I've been in my house for 40 years. I've never taken a shower this good. Or, we can finally use 10 fixtures at once. It's amazing. Like I never even thought I'd be able to do that. Like, so these are things that like, it's more than just irrigation. Like we want to have that volume and delivery of water for everything because your house is going to perform. Your hot water heater is going to perform better. If you have tankless now and all this kind of stuff, that volume is important. Yeah. It's important for the efficiency and everything. So.
Run into it all the time. I run into, you got just in the house because we like to run multiple fixtures at the same time, try to put a lot of volume to the waste system too. But I mean, we'll put a couple fixtures on downstairs. You go turn the shower on upstairs, it's just not. It's just leaking out, just leaking out. People live with it because a lot of people use one fixture at a time, and even when you use the one fixture, it's kind of dribbling out anyway. But they're kind of okay with the low pressure. So there's multiple benefits to increasing the volume of water that flows through it. But we don't necessarily need to upgrade the line. We just need to make sure that the line is working the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. Now, a lot of times, too, we may be in a good position where we're in a new construction site and we're working with the builder and telling him, like, hey, where's your landscape plan? I need to see what's going on. If it's a large site, an acre or more, I might say, hey, look, number one, get a well, right? Which is another way to get around
That's
the water issue.
one of my questions I was going to ask.
Or we have the solution to get a bigger main, just install it, put a meter in for the irrigation, separate it from the house, because the last thing you're going to want to do, that 20-plus zone system, is run your sprinklers tied in off of your water main, restrict flow to your house, because now you have this monstrous sprinkler system that's running for 6 to 8 hours or whatever the case may be, that takes away from everything you need to do in your house on your daily
so when we can get ahead of it, there's always a best practice. So you mentioned wells, well pumps, so you're a fan.
I am.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
Because I see them a lot. I see it a lot. And I see them left in place, and I will always throw a note in where, because people want to just throw it out. I'm like, if you're going to run sprinklers, you can run it to that.
So there's now the beauty of my experience in the industry and the fact that I got to work in a lot of different states, in the country. Down south, we don't realize how fortunate we are here. Our water is super cheap. Even with all these increases that we've had the past couple of years, it's like one of the lowest utilities we're ever going to see. You go anywhere outside of New York and ask people what they're paying for water, you're going to think they're paying for electricity and gas combined. Really? It's insane.
That's crazy.
When I lived in Virginia Beach, it was like it was like gold. Literally.
So it was actually a bill that people really, because if you don't use your sprinklers, your water bill is
it's nothing.
It's like $45 a quarter.
Even less. It's ridiculous. It really is. And then the sprinklers come into play, and it's like, oh my God, I paid $100. I'm like, I know people get $800 bills down south,
and it's quarterly too. So it's $100 divided by 3. So it's really not that bad.
It's wild. So like now, there are different types of wells, and we do have these older. I refer to them commonly as shallow wells. I have a lot of experience with wells. I worked for a company that installed wells and sprinklers down south, and these shallow wells with the pump that you see outside, the jet pump. You'll see it in a garage usually, sometimes in a basement, which is wild because they're so loud. But for the most part, you'll see an above ground pump that a pipe runs into. These shallow wells, we have a shallow water table here. We're very close to the water. Like a lot, especially here, you could probably dig a 3-foot deep hole and hit water right here.
Every time.
So I think, didn't you guys have a house that was sinking back over here too, right?
He just put in like 25 helical piles and he put a second story on it.
So there you go. Extremely shallow water table right here. So that all being said, we're also close to, what we are close to, the bay. We have brackish water here, so we can pull salt, which, contaminates and whatnot and kills plants, right? So we don't want salt going on our grass. We don't want it going on our plants. We can also pull iron, right? Iron is a staining contaminant. So you're going to have white PVC fences, super popular now. You're going to get brown stains on them. Your cars, your driveway, pavers. Everybody's got beautiful pavers and hardscapes going in now, and they get stained. You can put additives and stuff like that in a well to help, but it's not the best. So nowadays, like if you're going to retain your well, my recommendation is if you want to save on the water, if we continue to have these spikes, have an actual deep well put in, a submergible pump.
Well. Okay.
Yeah, a real well. Have it drilled, deep enough to where they can find clean water. They can test the water. They can make sure it's not going to stain. It's not going to have these contaminants and particles in it that are going to be harmful or in any way, shape, or form. And that way you're getting free water. You're using a little bit of electricity. It's efficient. Maybe you have to change your motor every 10, 15 years.
Yeah, there's always maintenance to it.
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah. But, now you're also, like we talked about, you're not kind of interfering with, the daily activity in your
the house can function. You'll never notice your sprinklers are on. Yep. Just the pump goes on.
That's it.
It's really interesting stuff, man.
Yeah.
I can talk to you about sprinklers probably for about 3 to 4 hours because
Isn't it wild?
Yeah, you're so. But this is why I do this. This is what I did. I've said this before multiple times in other episodes. This is the conversations I've had with contractors and tradespeople my entire career, and this is how I provide better service to my clients. It's not me. I'm just repeating what you're telling me as the professional. I'm repeating it to my clients. You're just doing it for them. I love it. I love having you on. I appreciate all this good info. I've learned a lot sitting here talking to you, and this isn't the first conversation we've had, which is dope because we've had multiple conversations, and I'm still learning from you. So I appreciate it more than you know, dude. Thank you so much, man.
And I tell everybody when I meet them the first time, especially on estimates, I say, I hope you got a lot of time. Right? And it's not because I'm a BSer or any of that. Like my job, I'm not doing my job if I don't leave somewhere and you didn't learn something.
That's awesome.
Right? So and I tell people that. You don't want to hire somebody that's coming over, looking around, even if they show up. Everybody's Google Earth nowadays because they're too lazy to leave their house.
Yeah.
So they could show up in 5 minutes, look around, never even check your water, give you an estimate, and it's $1,000 less than mine. And great, you saved $1,000 less than I would have charged you. But 10 years from now, you've lost all these plants, you've damaged your house, you've done all this stuff, and was it really worth it?
Yeah, save now to spend more in the long run.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let me come over and educate you for free, because I'm willing to spend 2 hours shooting the shit for nothing. Imagine what I'm going to do for you when you're actually
paying you. Yeah,
so
I like that. That's a pretty good ad for
I
yourself there. I like that a lot.
I tell a lot of people that all
Imagine
the time.
what I'll do if you actually pay me.
yeah. That's it.
I love that. All right, sweet, man. Thank you so much. If you want to take a second to drop your info for the,
Yep. Listen, you can find me anywhere on the island. We service from the city all the way to Montauk, South and North Shore. I am on Instagram, Rain Rite Inc., RAINRITEINC. Our office, 631-278-2624. Or you can even email me, rainriteinc@gmail.com. Really hope to hear from everybody. Hope to keep everybody informed and knowledgeable. And hope you guys have a great, happy, healthy holiday season.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you so much. Thank you so much, man. You're the best.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. Till next time, stay knowledgeable.